To play Oblivion was to witness the end of an era and the events of the Oblivion crisis. For those who have already played Skyrim, I highly recommend playing through such a monumental time in Elder Scrolls history and enjoying what is, in my opinion, one of the greatest games ever made. But for myself and many others, this experience was our first Elder Scrolls game we ever touched, before we would later go on to play Morrowind and, of course, Skyrim. As much as I love Skyrim, Oblivion has this extra special place in my heart. It is a game that Scott picked up off the shelf at random when I was 10 years old, and it planted the seed of inspiration which would eventually lead us to create FudgeMuppet 7 years ago. For me to be able to share my passion with you by making content on this game, well, that's a dream come true, and it's exactly what I plan to do today. But it wasn't just the base game that captivated my heart. Oblivion also has one of, if not the best Elder Scrolls DLC of all time, the Shivering Isles. Everyone loves Sheogorath, and going to a well-made, fleshed-out map of his realm is just so much fun. It can be dark and confronting. Other times it's wacky and manic, warped, even philosophical in some moments. Today we're going to dive through 5 things you may not know about the Shivering Isles, focusing on some of the most fascinating content from the DLC, and hopefully if you've never played Oblivion before, you'll give it a shot after you've finished watching this video. If you've been watching FudgeMuppet for a while, you might remember our discussion videos about 2 very unique types of armor, Amber armor and Madness armor, both of which can be crafted by talented blacksmiths living on opposing sides of the main city of New Sheogorath. When it comes to Amber, the type located in the Shivering Isles is very special. This Amber is actually the hardened sap that occurs as a result of the massive pressures and frictional forces encountered by the huge root system beneath the surface, which pushes its way through tons of rock and dirt. Just like skin bleeds to scab over a wound, these extraordinary root tunnels bleed a sap that hardens into amber deposits. Creatures known as gnolls can also carry this Shivering Isles amber material with them. Using special techniques, the blacksmith found in Bliss, Dumag Grabonk, can craft such amber into powerful lightweight weapons and armor. On the other side of New Sheogorath in Crucible, the blacksmith known as Cutter can work with a very different material known as Madness ore. This mysterious ore is said to have the spirits of ancient souls trapped inside of it. It's supple, flexible, and holds a good edge. Madness ore is truly mysterious, and we can speculate that the souls of the ancient insane are trapped within it, and perhaps this is what gives it its unique form and powerful nature. Madness armor in its perfect version provides even better protection than Daedric. So what if Amber and Madness ore were combined together to create something truly deadly and equally as unique? Well, what you may not know is that such a fusion has actually taken place. There is a weapon where this is the case. I didn't mean to make that rhyme, but I'm sure Sheogorath would approve. Nerve Shatter is a unique warhammer that is wielded by Syl, the Bosma Duchess of Dementia. As crafty as she is beautiful, according to Sheogorath, which we can assume means very crafty, but based on the quality of faces in Oblivion, it could really mean anything. She may use it against you in the Roots of Madness quest, or if you decided you were going to overthrow her and take her spot in the Ritual of Accession quest. In that quest, you'll need to rip out her heart, and she will make sure this unique hammer is put to good use trying to stop you. The hammer itself is said to have taken many lives, at least in the hands of Syl, who says that the hero will be but another notch in my hammer. The level 30 plus variant has the highest base damage of any weapon, tied with a couple of others. It deals shock damage up to 24 points depending on the level, and it was intended to deliver a weakness to shock to the target also up to a massive 48%. Unfortunately, the weakness to shock duration was set for 0 seconds, which means it doesn't work at all, but this is fixed by the unofficial Shivering Isles patch. How this weapon was made is unknown, whether the 2 current blacksmiths who know how to work with Amber and Madness ore crafted it together, or separately but in different stages, or whether some of their blacksmith predecessors built it, forging this artifact long ago, remains a mystery. One of the first things encountered in the Shivering Isles is a hulking beast of a creature known as the Gatekeeper. To defeat it, one must poison their weapon with the tears of its creator, a dark elf known as Relmina Verenim. She'll also assist you in rebuilding the Gatekeeper yourself, in which case you can choose new bonuses for it by deciding between slightly varying body parts with armor and weapons attached. But did you know this working with flesh or flesh magic is still shrouded in mystery, and there are various examples popping up throughout other times in the history of Tamriel, and not just in the Shivering Isles? So Relmina claims to have discovered what she calls the sixth element. Using her knowledge of this flesh element, Relmina is able to create flesh atronachs by sewing together the fleshy body parts of the dead, and then using some kind of magic to create the Elder Scrolls version of Frankenstein's monster. These atronachs are said to host the soul of a Daedra, so it's not as straightforward as necromancy. So instead of calling back the soul of the fallen, you're imbuing collected mortal flesh with the soul of a Daedra. I'd say it definitely falls within the school of conjuration if we did want to categorize it. In the Shivering Isles, the flesh atronachs have glowing spots that can be yellow, purple, or orange, depending on the classification and power levels. Interestingly, there's also some failed experiments, and you'll notice that these bodies are missing the ingredient found on every successful flesh atronach in the Isles, void essence. What this actually is isn't fully explained, but it seems to be an essential component. Perhaps the word void refers to it being a completely empty substance that acts like a cup, and the Daedra's soul is poured into it. But if the essence isn't created properly, then there's nowhere to put the soul, and therefore no flesh atronach coming to life, hence the failures. Let me know what you think it is. Creating the new Gatekeeper is even more complicated, involving a ritual and a list of unique ingredients: blood liqueur, osseous marrow, dermis membrane, and essence of breath. It is understandable that a monstrosity such as the Gatekeeper would not be easy to make, especially considering that the procedure of making a standard flesh atronach, at least the type Relmina creates, sounds a bit tricky. I mean, look at all the markings carved into their flesh. But did you notice that zealots are somehow able to summon standard flesh atronachs? How they pull this off, I'm not sure. Perhaps the Daedra's souls inside the flesh atronachs are pulled from one location to another using conjuration magic, transporting the fleshy body with it. The player also receives the summoned flesh atronach greater power after rebuilding the Gatekeeper. Some people even speculate that flesh atronachs are just full-on Daedra, but to me it seems a bit more complicated. What's also peculiar is that in the Elder Scrolls 2 Daggerfall, you may encounter a flesh atronach when sent to hunt a randomly summoned atronach for a quest. The flesh atronachs in this case have a poison damage aura, are immune to paralysis, poison, and disease, and take damage from holy places. In the Elder Scrolls Online, Manamako supposedly created the first ever Flesh Colossus, experimenting with flesh magic. Similarly to the Flesh Atronach in Daggerfall, it has a poison theme to it, being able to use poison-based attacks. There's also standard Flesh Atronachs in Elder Scrolls Online, which look quite chunkier than the ones from the Isles. There's even some examples of flesh magic potentially being used in Skyrim, such as by the Butcher of Windhelm, Calixto, and Galathiel, the Face Sculptor. But I want to discuss all of that in a dedicated flesh magic video where we'll have time to dive deeper, so stay tuned for that. Now, speaking of Daedra, what you may not know about the Shivering Isles is that some of the most iconic Daedra found here can actually be found elsewhere. Take the two rivals, the Dark Seducers and the Golden Saints, for example. These Daedra are incredibly important in the Shivering Isles, acting as the guards of either mania or dementia, helping to put lawbreakers in their place and keep the city safe from threat. They are involved in important events, such as helping the hero get the Flame of Agnon to relight the Great Torch, and do their best to impress Lord Sheogorath. Given how important they are, one would think that they probably aren't found outside of the Isles, but surprisingly they are. Golden Saints can be found in some locations in Morrowind, in certain caves, Daedric ruins, an old Dwemer fortress, and even the Grazelands, depending on your level. Given their most sacred location, called Brelak, is in the Isles, and contains the Wellspring of the Oriel, we can assume the Golden Saints still come from this realm, but it is interesting to know that they're not restricted solely to this place. Further support that they come from the Isles is provided when one of them says that if Brelak were to fall, it would be the end for my kind. They could also be summoned using a spell in Morrowind and also in Oblivion. The Dark Seducers have also been found elsewhere. They've been found in various spots in Elder Scrolls Online, and in an Elder Scrolls Legend Battlespire, Mehrunes Dagon had recruited many of them to his ranks, and this was after they betrayed their previous mistress, Jaciel Morgan, who was a lieutenant of Nocturnal, looking after Nocturnal's pocket realm, Shade Perilous. Mehrunes Dagon even took one of these Mazkin, as they are called, to be his bodyguard and lover, and gave her the weapon known as the Sword of the Moonreaver. That said, the Dark Seducers also have a wellspring of swords in the Shivering Isles at their base at Pinnacle Rock, and are quoted as saying, "Sheogorath is our lord, ruler of the Shivering Isles. It is by his whim that the Maz can walk, and we serve our master to the death." Whether he actually created them or they simply used the workings of Pinnacle Rock to enter the realm from another realm using their base, we do not know. Flesh Atronachs, as we have discussed, are also found outside of the Isles, but what may not be so obvious is that hungers, those gaunt, malnourished looking monstrosities, are often servants of Boethia and are associated with her more so than with Sheogorath. This is despite the fact that hungers are notorious on the Isles for being deadly, and are said to be a good representation of the dark side of the Prince of Madness. Statues of hungers can be found in the Isles, carved around the entrances of certain ruins, which again makes it all the more interesting to discover they're mostly in service to Boethia, the Daedric Prince of Deceit and Treachery. For those who have played the Elder Scrolls Online, there's a few places you may have run into a hunger, particularly on Vardenfell, and if you've played Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, you'll know that hungers featured in this game too. We all know that the Shivering Isles is home to some of the wackiest, craziest occurrences a mortal may ever come across, but what you may not know is that some of the manic behavior is caused by two powerful substances. These two substances may look quite similar, both being green consumables, but Feldew and Greenmote are indeed different and are both fascinating for their own reasons. Let's start with Feldew, a highly addictive narcotic that is so powerful you become addicted the first time you consume it. The effects of withdrawal are highly debilitating and they start kicking in just 90 seconds after you use it, progressing to increasingly worse stages in further 45-second increments. Use over a long period of time can even change facial appearance for the worse and cause high levels of aggression. But how about the benefit? Well, you instantly get two Feldew Euphoria effects, which both increase strength, intelligence, and agility by 10 points. After 45 seconds, one of these Euphoria buffs drops off, and after another 45 seconds, they're both gone, and painful Feldew withdrawal begins. You'll go through increasingly worse stages until you're at Ruinous, where you'll have -15 to all of your attributes and -15 to your health. This bright green substance is produced by unique mantis creatures found in the Shivering Isles, known as the Elytra, specifically the particular variety of Elytra found within Dunroot Burrow. Elytra can attack you with melee or with mystic venom, and as a bonus fact you may not know, they can even walk on water. Anyway, the only way to get rid of the withdrawal effects is to have more of it, making you crave the use permanently, unless you get a unique item known as the Chalice of Reversal. This can permanently cure the addiction and makes Feldew grant you +5 intelligence, strength, and agility, and +20 to health and magicka from then on. Oddly, the Chalice is guarded by Feldew addicts in an area you can find after heading deep within Dunroot Burrow. Their faces have definitely been affected, which makes me wonder if the Chalice is actually being used by them to cure problems with their addiction at all. They live a very indulgent life and make sure to keep a copy of the lusty Argonian maid laying around. And then we come to refined Greenmote, which exists as a light green powder, far less bright in appearance than Feldew, but don't let that fool you into thinking it isn't also incredibly potent and dangerous. Unrefined Greenmote comes from the mushroom tree sapling plants found around the Isles, specifically those in the Mania region. The player can collect it but never refine it, and it's largely considered useless. Only the Duke of Mania possesses the refined version, stored in a hidden silo which can be found in a secret tunnel system beneath the Palace of Sheogorath. Refined Greenmote can be added to food, eaten as is, or even mixed into a poison. Taking 3 doses within 60 seconds causes instant death, even for the player, as it literally makes one's heart explode. In small doses, it allows you to see in the dark, drains intelligence, agility, and strength each for 10 points, so the opposite of Feldew in that respect, but then it increases endurance, speed, and personality for 10 points each. It also blurs your vision, which is kind of fun. According to lore, it is tradition for an exiting Duke of Mania to overdose on Greenmote while having a great feast with his successor. To become the new Duke, the successor must take the blood of the now dead predecessor and pour it onto the altar in the Sakellum Arden Sul, where it will be consumed by flame. The Sakellum Arden Sul is the church in New Sheoth, and Arden Sul is a long-lost powerful prophet and ruler that previously existed in the Isles. The events of his life and death are largely debated, but the Manics believe he died in a night of absolute indulgence, where he and his guests overdosed on Greenmote.
Stop! You violated the law.
We've all heard this infamous quote from the guards of Oblivion. You've probably seen it memed or had your Elder Scrolls loving friends boom it straight into your ears when you least expected it. I know I've heard it yelled at Bethesda events far too many times, although it never fails to get a laugh. Well, in the Shivering Isles, the guards won't be blurting out this aggressive line whenever you do the wrong thing, and while your options of paying your fine, serving your sentence, or paying with your blood remain the same, if you do actually submit and go to jail, you'll find things are quite different to what your criminal experiences have gotten you used to. While other individuals in the Shivering Isles may find themselves given hundreds of keys to search through in order to open the door to what they want, you won't be given this in jail. In fact, your jail cell, if we can even call it that, has a button in it which simply opens the door for you. But what lays beyond your stone-walled room is not your freedom. In fact, it is likely your death. Are you aware of just how different jail in the Shivering Isles is? And there's not just one jail, there's two, and then there's a third place you're sent if you commit the worst crime of all. One jail is called Icon, and you're sent here if you're arrested in Mania territory by one of the Golden Saints. The other, Corpse Rot Passage, is where you're sent if you're taken in by a dark seducer in dementia. Both provide you with a bed to sleep in if you wish to serve your sentence the old-fashioned way, but you'll also find a container with some food and likely a weapon also. Lockpicks will not be needed, but why would they give you a weapon? Well, pushing the mania or dementia-themed button will cause one of the walls to retract and you'll be able to attempt a jailbreak. Depending on if you're in Icon or Corpse Rot Passage, there's a variety of obstacles you can go through. In Icon, you've got two choices. Going through multiple rooms of high-damage lethal traps is the first. There are floors that open up and drop you down into a room that has darts shooting up to the ceiling while dangerous spells fly around hoping to get lucky and take you out. You may also find yourself face to face with an angry Grummite. Taking a different path will have you head through an underground root system infested with natural traps of its own and some aggressive creatures eager to slay you. Scale-ons for most characters, but young Balawogs if you're quite a low level. At the end of either path, you'll have to fight a Golden Saint turnkey who is guarding the evidence chest that has your confiscated items in it. After finishing her off, you can leave via the front door. Escaping Corpse Rot Passage is a bit more linear in terms of the way out, aside from a detour which may be had by falling down an opening floor trap. You also must head through a mix of both ruins and the root system. The entire place will be filled with Grummites trying to kill you, and while I said the path is linear, I only mean that in the sense that there's only one true way out. There's still heaps of rooms and kind of dead-end paths for you to accidentally walk into, only to find yourself stuck with Grummites blocking the only way back out. At the end, you'll be able to get your gear from the evidence chest and fight the Dark Seducer turnkey before escaping. Besides being quite the unique jail experience through lots of testing, I found it quite interesting that escaping jail is the same regardless of your bounty. Whether it's 40 bounty or 10,000 bounty, the amount and strength of enemies remains the same. Enemies are scaled to your level, not your bounty. It's pretty much just not worth sleeping in that bedroll and serving your sentence, but could you expect anything but the nonsensical from such a realm? So while Sheogorath doesn't seem to care for the difference of you stealing a cheese wedge versus slaying 10 innocent citizens of New Sheoth, there is one ultimate punishment reserved for the most serious crime of all, attacking Sheogorath. Upon doing this, he'll be happy to let you know,
"You really shouldn't have done that.
Always
Enjoy the
and immediately teleports you high into the sky, from which you will fall to a place known as Punishment Point and die. In fact, this execution style punishment is so strong, you'll die even if you turn on God mode. Not even console commands are powerful enough to combat the wrath of this Daedric prince. And that, my friends, concludes 5 things you may not know about the Shivering Isles. Thank you so much for listening to me share my passion for Oblivion with you, and if you enjoyed the video and learned something new, I'd really appreciate if you could strike that like button with as much cheese as possible. It would really help to get more engagement towards this older game, which I think deserves way more attention. Let me know what you love about this insane realm in the comments. Again, if you've never played Oblivion before, I strongly recommend you give it a go. Sure, it's aged a bit, but let's be real, strong fans of the Elder Scrolls games never fell in love with this series due to a focus on the graphics anyway. As always, social media links can be found in the description below for anyone interested. My name is Michael, and I look forward to nerding out with you again very soon.